So why do we need the wilderness? Or do we? I'm going to try to answer that. But first things first, coffee. Quite a bit of bird activity. It's one of the beautiful things about being out early in the morning. Sometimes you can catch a glimpse of something really special or hear something really special. So I'm sure you've all heard the saying, the mountains are calling and I must go. The forest is calling and I must go. But why are they calling us? Could it be that there's a wild thing in each one of us that has to get back to our primitive origins? Some people will say that we're recalling something from our ancient past and it's in our genetics. That in the beginning, as hunters and gatherers, there's been a remnant of something there that remains, and it works in us a little bit to call us back to nature. I think there's a little bit more to it than that. There may be something to that, but I think there's a little bit more to it. Certainly we can talk about benefits. There are a lot of benefits to being out in the woods, to being in nature, to being in the mountains or in the forest or in the desert. Just to get there, you need to spend a little bit of effort, right? And then once you're there, I suppose you could sit in a chase lounge or in a cabin and not do anything at all. But typically when people go out to the wilderness, they want to explore. They want to walk around, at least. If not, camp or climb. And if you do anything along those lines, it's going to be beneficial for your heart. You're going to get your heart rate up, your pulse pumping, get more oxygen into your lungs. You're going to fatigue your muscles, which is necessary for muscle growth. In addition to the let's say the fitness benefits, it's also the relaxation benefits. I think most of the time after we've achieved our goal, that we've reached the top of the mountain or we've reached the destination by a river, we all like to kick back and relax just a little bit, right? And relaxation can't be overestimated in its benefits for the body and its benefits for the soul and for the mind. People who work 24/7 and don't relax get burnt out. And then there's also the idea that our bodies have a type of magnetism or a magnetic compass, and that with all of the electronics that we use smartphones, computers, televisions, whatever it is, that magnetic compass is not true. And then in order to reset your magnetic compass, you need to stay, I don't know if it's something like 24 hours without electronics. Some people would find that very difficult to do. I find it difficult to do. But when it happens, we're rejuvenated. It's like we've recharged and we're ready to go back and face a world that can be not so nice. In addition to the physical aspects, we can talk about the benefits of beauty. I think humans have the desire, and not just the desire, but the need to behold beauty. And whether that's in art, or whether that's in nature, whether that's looking at a billion stars at night, or whether that's participating in the activity of photography, anything along those lines. Sigurd Olsen was a famous canoeist backpacker in Minnesota, Canada. He said that joys come from simple and natural things. Mist over meadows, sunlight on leaves, the path of the moon over water. Even rain and wind and stormy clouds bring joy. And I think Mr. Olsen nailed it. And that once you're out in nature, it is a type of art. I would say that it's a creation by a really big artist we call God, and that his finger painting can be seen no matter where you look in nature. And it's my sincere belief that the more time you spend in nature, the more you're going to come to the conclusion that there's something more than just an accident that happened millions of years ago, and that this is all by chance. You know, before this current world of technology, most people believed in God. That kind of went away. And I'm certain that our ancestors were not any less intelligent than we are. Maybe less informed, but just about all of the knowledge that people have today is because we've stood on the shoulders of our ancestors. And most of our ancestors had a great faith in God. That's my belief, and I'm sure you all have your own. Getting back to the beauty of nature, I'm sure we're all familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien, right? He wrote The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbits. He said, "For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green." Green is a color that humans see better than any other color, and we can see various shades of green better than we can any other color. But man, how true is that? You know, the Emerald Isle, Ireland, one of the reasons people desire to go there is because you can see thousands of different greens. And even here in the woodland, if you look around, I mean, how many greens are there? And nature, no matter what it is that you're doing, the wilderness is absolutely beautiful. And that gives a richness to our soul. And then we can talk about the simplicity and the need for simplicity. We've succeeded as a society to complicate our lives. With internet, with email. Yeah, we can do a lot of things more easily. But because we can do things quicker and more easily, more is expected of us. And everything in the business world, at least, needs to be done yesterday. Not in a couple of hours, but yesterday. And the amount of stress that people have trying to work, taking kids around, all of the housework, everything that goes with being an adult, and without taking the time to relax. There's something in the simplicity of nature that really calls to us as well. One of the reasons I enjoy bushcraft is because I can get out away from, let's say, the rat race. And if I need a fork, I can cut a piece of wood and I can make a fork. And there's an inherent fascination and beauty and simplicity in being able to, it's redundant, but able to do simple things on your own without the pressure of this has to be done now. You can take things in your own time. You can get in tune with the cadence of the natural surroundings where you are. And you're going to find that cadence and that rhythm is much, much slower than what we find in society. I carry my backpack around with me, and it's heavy because it's a canvas backpack. It's a wax canvas. I've got an oilcloth tarp. Everything that I carry is heavy, but the reason I do it is because it harkens back to a different time, and the traditionalism and the simplicity of the things that I use when I'm camping or when I'm doing bushcraft creates a satisfaction in the deepest part of me. Here I don't hear any traffic. There's no rush. I make coffee when I want to make coffee. I create something if I want to create something. I watch the birds. I listen to the sounds of nature. If I could read another quote from Sig Olson. Simplicity in all things is the secret of the wilderness and one of its most valuable lessons. It is what we leave behind that is important. I think the matter of simplicity goes further than just food, equipment, and unnecessary gadgets. It goes into the matter of thoughts and objectives as well. When in the wilds, we must not carry our problems with us, or the joy is lost. So that's pretty key, that it's not just the things, the electronics that we need to leave behind, but also our problems. Much easier said than done, because our our minds tend to constantly work at solving problems. And even when we have free time, it's often the case that we continue to drift back to what we need to do tomorrow, what we need to do when we get home. And I think it's pretty normal. I remember being in the Boundary Waters canoe area in northern Minnesota and Quetico in Canada. And usually it took a couple of days before I would stop looking at my watch. A couple of days before I could escape the notion that something had to be done at a certain time. There's a restaurant here in Italy called Schiacciapensieri, and the loose translation would be to release your thoughts, to It's agriturismo. It's a place that's out in the wilderness, out amongst the vineyards, really, of wine that is famous here in this area. And you can sit out on the terrace and you can see this beautiful panorama of rolling hills, and it's wine country, and it's beautiful. But I like the idea. Throw away your thoughts. Can you do it? Easier said than done, but important. On a lesser note, there's the idea of the ability to overcome simple hardships. There's call him a daimyo, a warlord, in 16th century Japan by the name of Oda Nobunaga. And Oda Nobunaga said, one of life's greatest pleasures is overcoming obstacles. And I think that's true. I think when we have a challenge or a task ahead of us and we can accomplish it, there's a feeling of satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. In society, so many of the things that we are stressed about and worried about are not in our control to overcome. And that's especially true if you watch the news, right? Somebody said that stress is caused by worrying about things that you can't control. And when we watch the news and all of the problems of pandemics and wars and so many things that we absolutely have no control over enter our being, basically we've got the weight of all of the problems of the world on our shoulders, and there's not anything we can do about it. That's stress. And let me tell you, stress will kill more people than anything else. It's toxic. It's poison. It makes your body acidic. Cancer grows in an acidic environment. All of your organs stop functioning as well in a stressful situation. And stress will kill a person. Not to mention the lack of sleep or the arguments you get in because you're stressed. But when you get out in nature and when you get in the wilderness, you have the ability to control the obstacles and to overcome them most of the time. Obviously, if you're camping and there's a hurricane, that's going to be an obstacle you can't really overcome except for being able to take shelter. But for the most part, again, with bushcraft, if I need something, I can make it. If I'm cold, I can build a fire. If I'm warm, I can, too warm, I can cool myself down by jumping in a river or a lake. There's simple things, but there's simple things that we can control. If we're hungry, we can cook. That's true at home, obviously. But there are many, many tasks that we have absolute control over. And so, again, I said it's on a lesser level, but when you're out in the woods, you don't have all of the same pressures that society put on the populace as a whole that are uncontrollable. It's like a microenvironment of situations that are within our control. And we can thrive. And we can get rid of all of those toxic feelings and poisonous thoughts. And then at least for some period of time, we can have a sense of wholeness and completeness and peace that's not found in the working world that's mostly in the cities. Yet another concept would be the lack of malice. What do I mean by that? Well, I think we all know some bad people. We know people that get under our skin. Whether it's a neighbor that you don't get along with, or somebody in your job that makes your job very difficult to do without being irritated and agitated. You know, I started working when I was 15 years old, so I've had close to a full-time job all of my life. And I think just about every job I've ever had at least one person that drove me nuts, that I just wanted to say, man, I would love my job if this person wasn't here. There's an old saying, if you sit by a river long enough, eventually the dead bodies of your enemies will float past. And that's not a very nice saying. But what it means, if you stay in a place long enough, you know, bad people come and bad people go in your life, if you live long enough. And then certainly if you watch the news or read the newspaper, you don't have to be tuned in very long before you hear about something horrible done by somebody horrible. Whether it's a politician or a tyrant or a mother killing her child, or there's a whole slew of things that indicate that there's malice in the world. Jordan Peterson has become famous on the internet for various reasons, and whether you love him or whether you hate him, you have to admit that he says some good things. And what he says, one of the things that he says is that in this world there's suffering and malice, and we need to find ways to combat these things, because everybody's going to experience it. And what he says is that two ways to combat suffering and malice in life is being responsible, trying to make the world a better place, doing the things that you need to do in order to, create a microenvironment of something positive, which can then grow into something bigger in society, and also being truthful. And because the truth will set you free, even though it's not easy to be truthful all the time. For me, there's a couple other ways to fight malice and suffering. One of them is faith. And you say, well, faith in what? For me, faith in God. And that goes hand in hand with something else, that whether you believe in God or not, it needs to be grounded, needs to be, I'd say, inherent in the deepest parts of us, and that is that our life has a purpose, that we have a purpose. And with some basic tools, you can be strong enough to get through the struggles in life, whether it's malicious people or whether it's suffering that happens to every single one of us. But when you get in the wilderness, you can escape that malice for a time. You know, here I am in the middle of a woodland. There's not any bad people here. And certainly the animals aren't bad. Some of them need to be treated with respect, but they're not bad. They just are what they are. And they do the things that they're designed to do. But you don't have any malicious intent when you're in the woods, or in nature, or in the desert, or in the mountains, or on the ocean even, you know. When you get away from society and you get away from people, the evilness is not seeable. And though you understand that it still exists in the world, you get a temporary reprieve from it, which can also rejuvenate you and give you a type of recharge that when you go back, you can have a little bit more strength and a little bit more peace in order to combat the things you need to combat. George Washington Sears, famously known as Nessmuk, was considered by many to be the father of bushcraft. He said this: we do not go to green woods and crystal waters to rough it. We go to smooth it. We get it rough enough at home, towns and cities, and shops, offices, stores, banks, anywhere that we may be placed. And I think that's right on. Because in addition to being victims of bad situations, I'd say a great majority of us also create bad situations. And we have to live with the decisions that we've made in our life. Certainly not everybody. I think there are some people who are diligently trying to be the best people that they can be and create as few problems for other people as possible. But I think every single one of us have done things where we have created problems. And then whether the problem has been created by somebody else or the problem has been created by ourselves, when we get into the wilderness, we have a reprieve from the mess of society, from the mess of our lives. Or even if it's not a mess, from the battle that we have to face on a daily basis, whether it was created by us or created by somebody else. But I certainly don't mean that we should escape them, because the problems will still be there when we get back. So, another thing that the wilderness helps us to do is to be alone with our thoughts. Unless you're going camping with 15 people and you're drinking all night and staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning, partying and falling asleep by the fireplace and waking up with frost on your face. But if you can get out with you're just by yourself or with another person, there's downtime to reflect. And that's really difficult for some people, to be alone with their thoughts. Some people are workaholics because they can't stand the idea of being alone with their thoughts, of having time to have some self-reflection. And self-reflection is necessary. If we're going to become better people, we have to realize where our weaknesses are and try to make those areas stronger to overcome ourselves, our selfishness, our greed, to be able to decipher if we've done things incorrectly or correctly, and to remedy the bad things in our lives. And you can't do that without having some time alone to think. I'd say it's one of the most important things for growth as a human being. And it can lead to a potential battle, because if you realize that there's something you need to change in your life, and that could be a whole range of things, from addiction to bad behavior with other people to maybe a marriage that's not going so well, and you have to have some difficult conversations instead of just fighting and bickering over little things, because those things will continue to grow in you, and the animosity will always become greater and greater and greater until you confront that situation. The best way to confront a situation is to have some time to think about it. So, in addition to leaving your problems temporarily, you're also in the wilderness going to find so let's put it all together, a slower cadence, a time of peace, and what comes with that is a little bit of self-reflection. And you can realize some of the things you've done maybe incorrectly and go back and correct them. So in the end, your time of being in the bush, in the wilderness, in nature, is going to lead you to being a better person. And everybody that's around you is going to be thankful of that. And then and I think probably the last thing I want to talk about is that something that goes hand in hand with that is when you're in nature, when you see the grandeur and the beauty and the peace of nature, it gives us a better perspective of our lives. What I mean by that is that it doesn't take very long of sitting and watching and listening before we realize that we are not the center of the universe. Let me give you an example. In the times that I spent canoeing the north woods of the United States and Canada, and you go in with this mindset of adventure, and you go in with this mindset of doing something really fun, really adventurous, right? And when you're sitting out on a point overlooking a lake, and at night when you can see the Milky Way and you can see the Aurora Borealis, eventually I would get the feeling that what exists here is wind and waves. And time seems to stand still. There's a Japanese expression that it's good to have a rock. Okay, so if you do something, some of you may think it's silly, but do something as simple as watch a rock. A good rock. A decent-sized rock. And you realize how long it's been there. And you realize all of the problems that have entered the world and passed out of the world during the time of the life of that rock. Suddenly, our problems become much more insignificant. Because during the life of that rock, politicians have come and gone. Kingdoms have come and gone. Drama comes and goes. Tyrants, wars, they come and they go, and the rock is still there. And it hasn't been affected very much. Greed, selfishness, these bad things in life, they come and they go. And we realize that our life is very short. And maybe it gives us the determination and the idea that in our short life, we can make something of it, and we can do as much as possible to make the world a better place. Because in 100 years, we're not going to be here. We may be alive still in paradise or some other place, depending on your religious beliefs, but we're not going to be an active participant on this earth as we have been during the 60, 70, 80 years that is the average life of man. And together with that, whatever our problems are that we're going through at the moment, and some of the problems that we face are daunting, to say the least. But when you see the steadfastness of nature and the longevity of the things that have existed in nature for a long, long, long time, it doesn't take long before we realize that this problem too will pass. This too shall pass. Regardless of how disturbing or disruptive it is, it's going to pass. You know, anytime I've been given a difficult task at a job, doing something that I've never done before, and there's a time pressure of getting it done correctly, but I have no idea what I'm doing. Say it's on a Monday. Something I tell myself was, one way or another, Tuesday will come. And just the idea that whatever it is that you have to go through, that situation's not going to be there forever. As difficult as it is, it's not going to be there forever. And I think the wilderness really leads to that understanding. You know, if you can look at a mountain and imagine how long it's been there and what it's seen, or a tree that's a couple hundred years old, what has that tree seen? It's seen a lot of bad things come, it's seen a lot of bad things go, and it's still there. That's true in our lives as well. A lot of bad things are going to come, and a lot of bad things are going to go. But we're survivors. We're not at our best perched on the summit. We're climbers. And we're at our best when the way is steep. And we can overcome our problems. Okay, I think that's enough philosophical ramblings for one day. If you're still with me, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and for watching this video. Nike is a brand that's been controversial for various reasons, but they absolutely came up with one of the best marketing campaigns in the history of humanity when they said, just do it. And that's what I'd like to encourage everybody to do. Just do it. Get out in the woods, get out in nature, get out in the wilderness, whether it's the high desert or the cliffs or the plains or the lakes or the ocean or the small woodlands and the forest, because it's never time lost, and it's always time well spent for one reason or another. I'd like to thank all of my new subscribers. I'd like to thank all of the people who have been here since day one, and I'll be back. I'm going to hang out here for a little while longer and do all of the things I've just been talking about. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you the next time. God bless everybody. Thanks again.